You are listening to the Folsom Frenzy podcast. I'm sitting here with Jake, Shreyas, Chase, and myself, Topher. If you like our content, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, follow us on anywhere you get your podcasts. We're coming to you after the miracle at Folsom Field. What a game. What a game. It's honestly one of the best college football games I've ever seen. We'll get into it with the offense, the defense, talk about special teams. There's definitely things that we can improve, but first and foremost, I just want to take it in and talk about how amazing that game was. So anybody want to add to what they experienced on game day?
It was insane.
I could jump in.
It was so crazy. Yeah. No, I'll let you talk, Jake. I want to hear your perspective.
I was going to be pretty brief, but just sports is so fickle. It's such a beautiful thing, right? I thought in the first half we were the better team and just made a lot of mistakes in special teams. In the second half, Baylor looked like a solid team. And Baylor made a ton of great plays. You had the great diving touchdown pass by the Baylor receiver. They were a solid team, and you could tell that they have a solid defense. But sports is so fickle in the fact that this podcast, that post-game press conference today would have gone completely differently if the last 2 seconds of that game went in another direction. So how exciting. This team is 3-1 with a miracle throw and a phenomenal play by Travis Hunter forcing the fumble. It's so exciting. I'm pumped. This team, I don't know. This team is made for destiny. It could be a magical season.
I think the most insane part is that we should have converted both Hail Marys, because the first one hit Will Shepherd right in the chest and he would have fallen into the end zone.
Well, quickly. No,
I don't think he would.
He was going to fall. He was going to fall in like the 3. It was kind of a good thing he didn't catch it.
To me, it looked like he fell out of embarrassment. That's how it looked. That's what it looked like to me when I went back and rewatched it. He fell out of embarrassment because he felt it hit his chest and just bounced straight off. It barely even touched his hands. That was painful. So from the angle, and I think Topher, you can relate to this since we're both on the south side. It looked to me like it was just a PI. And I didn't realize that it was such a bad drop until I saw the highlights later. And I was like, oh God. Oh, if I'd seen that then, I might have lost my mind. I was just sad after that. But then to come back and do it again, they basically ran the same play, just this time with LeJontay instead of Will. And just there's such a clutch play. It's unbelievable. He was like half a second from getting sacked too. The defender had his arm almost on Shedeur. It was so close. And honestly, I was kind of expecting to be like deflected or something and just got it off just in time, had just enough to get to the exact spot it needed to go. It was spectacular. The environment was amazing too.
Chase, you're going to like this, but that last play was a good play call. And you saw Travis Hunter in the press conference say, I was what's the word? Help me out here.
Triple team. He was like, I knew I had 3 guys on me, and so I went to the other side, and I made space because they can only defend me with so many people. And that's heads up. Frankly, that's good play design, right? And I don't know. Yeah. It sounds like Travis maybe communicated that before the play, but if you know that they're going to cover you up because you are the best player on the field, that creates a lot of space that normally wouldn't be there in a Hail Mary opportunity. And absolutely incredible ending. I just wish I didn't have to spend 90% of that game feeling like I was on suicide watch for the payoff, but maybe that's what makes it extra sweet, right? That was generally, I think, a pretty frustrating game. I think most, we'll talk about it more in more detail here in a minute, but really frustrating game from start to finish with a lot of self-inflicted, injuries, a lot of self-inflicted, mistakes and penalties and stuff like that. So to have the outcome work out for us was great, but we definitely left a lot on the table. And so it's optimistic because there's a lot that can be improved, but boy, it would have been a different feeling today. They kept it close and they had the opportunity, but after that dropped Hail Mary, I thought that was for sure it. But as a Minnesota Vikings fan, I know to never turn the TV off with a couple seconds left. So pretty incredible.
Especially the Vikings, right? That Stephon Diggs play.
And I am curious, as bad as it was watching on TV and being frustrated, it looked like it started raining. I wasn't sure if it started raining in the first quarter or when it started raining, but I'd imagine there was a time there where it was pretty miserable to be, in the stands getting rained on. Team is not playing well, a lot of mistakes. It's always great to be in Folsom Field, but especially for a homecoming game. But I'd imagine that was not as fun as, sitting in the living room.
So Chase, real quick before I let Topher talk, I was standing for a lot of the second half. And then I got tired and I sat down and my butt was wet for the rest of the game. It was terrible because it was actually coming down pretty good. Probably around Topher mid third quarter, would you say?
Mid third quarter, late third quarter. Yeah. It started
really coming down and
thicker.
And yeah, it was definitely very disheartening for a lot of that second half. Like, oh God, this is what we're going to deal with. This is one of the more winnable games. I think Baylor looked pretty good. We can get into that later. Baylor looked like they were improved, but it's like, oh God, this is a home game. This is one of the games that we really needed to win to get bowl eligibility on the table before the season. Oh God, like it's all falling apart. Yeah, it's raining. I hate this. I just want to go eat. The tailgate's obviously closed by then, but shoot, I want to go eat something. But Topher, I want to hear from you. I've been talking.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got there early for the tailgate and it looked like it was going to overcast. So we packed ponchos, we packed our waterproof blankets. But it really didn't start coming down in the third quarter. And honestly, thank goodness, because I think if it was coming down early like that, the crowd would have left. And I thought it was okay. Like when you were just standing still in the poncho and not moving around a ton and not sitting on the wet benches, it was okay. What was really miserable was after overtime. That's when it really was a huge downpour. Walking back to the car was miserable. So shout out to Colorado for holding off on that part of the rainstorm until after we won the game. That was, and like, again, that crowd noise, because they didn't leave in the fourth quarter, I don't know if it came through on the TV broadcast, but you could feel it in your chest, the way that people were just screaming and just hoping and willing the Buffs to third down stop. Excellent atmosphere in Folsom. But speaking of offense and defense, I know, so we have a group chat with all of us for those listening at home, and there's a little bit of discourse on the play calling and our offensive coordinating. So I will let the Pat Shurmur defender go first here, and Chase, I will let you defend
really
Pat
quick
Shurmur here.
Before Chase gets into it. Chase actually kicked me from our group chat because he didn't like my logic with talking about the OC. So with that, take it away here, Chase.
Yeah, and for the record, I decided I had to defend Pat Shurmur as a bit like 3 episodes ago. So if you haven't been watching, I have been ride or die with my boy Pat Shurmur.
Wait, it's a bit? It's a
who, is being unfairly persecuted, I think, because everyone, the simpleton fans such as Jake, who got kicked from our chat from not having football knowledge, looks and sees, oh, we haven't scored a lot of points, must be offensive coordinator's problem, right? And there's good reason to think that, right? There's a lot of talent on this team. But I don't think the play calling, other than, I will say, the second to last series where we went 3 and out after getting sacked mercilessly over and over, not great play calling there. It didn't feel like it. Nothing, creative, nothing to get it going. But also the O-line just kind of stopped, and I don't know what that was about, and we can talk more about that. But generally, I don't think that was a poorly, called game. We scored 38 points, and I know that's a little bit deceiving because there's overtime and there's that Hail Mary, but this Baylor team, I think, is pretty good, but this Baylor secondary is really good. And I think, I can't remember if someone here had come up with that or if that was something we saw on Twitter, but we definitely slept on the Baylor secondary. And that is a very good secondary who had our wide receivers in hell, it looked like. And Topher's going to pull some of the 12 or 11 man, 11 versus 11 film to kind of show it, but there was not a lot downfield. Now I do think and Jake's going to agree with me on this. And it's hard, it's hard to say this, and maybe we'll get some flack for this. We'll probably get flack for this on YouTube because we always do anytime you say anything negative. But I think, a big part of the problem was Shedeur was holding the ball forever. And everyone's going to say, oh, well, Shedeur was running for his life. Shedeur had a lot of plays where he had 5-6 seconds in the pocket and then started running for his life. That's not on your offensive line. That is either on your wide receivers or that's on Shedeur for not making a decision, or it could be bad play design. But I don't think it would be weird to me that it's all of a sudden just bad play design on the routes we're running. And obviously Shedeur found guys downfield eventually, but he's got to get the ball. And this is a constant criticism that we've had for him, but he was holding the ball forever. And on some of those drives at the end, it didn't even look like he was serious about throwing the ball ever. He was just kind of running around and then ultimately took a sack. He also needs to get better about throwing the ball away. So overall, I find it hard to believe, this was definitely, and Jake's going to have to give flowers here as well. This was definitely the most balanced offense we've had since Coach Prime got here, like for sure. Good amount of running. You can't always run on first down. And the stats will be a little bit, misleading, but Augustave had a great game. And keep in mind, you don't have your number one running back. He's hurt, or, theoretically your number one, Dallin Hayden, right? So I overall, I was pretty pleased with the play calling. I think Shedeur had a pretty bad game up until he decided to absolutely, blow us away. And I say that knowing he had 341 yards, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, right? Shedeur statistically had a phenomenal game, but there were several series where he's just holding the ball way too long. And it's frustrating to see people blaming the O-line that I thought generally until later in the game where I don't know what happened. I don't know if they gave up, what was going on. And yeah, they missed some blocking assignments, but that's going to happen, right? And they were only sending 4 and they were getting pressure. I get it. But Shedeur was holding the ball forever. And I think that's something that really needs to get improved, the longer we go into the Big 12, because you cannot allow that much pressure, with 4 guys. Yeah, I get it. But you got to get the ball out faster, especially when you have players. And I really like my last point, because I know I've been on my soapbox, but my favorite play, the new plays, were Shedeur running out to the side, having a wide receiver right there doing the short pass and then going. That's essentially the equivalent of a run. We talked about this last time, where it's very high statistics play, but now you're giving your wide receivers the chance to go out there and make a play. And a lot of the times they did. It's not a 70-yard play every time, but they're getting 8, 9, 7 yards here and there, and that really makes a difference in getting pressure off your offense.
Yeah, I think he did a great job, Chase. Great summary. It was a very well-balanced offense, which I was pretty pleased with. It was 21 carries for the team, which can't remember the last time we've had a game of more than 20 carries. So that was good to see. The running backs didn't have a great yards per carry average. One thing I didn't love is, and Chase is going to give me flack for this because I'm always pro run. But I didn't love when it was 2nd and 10 and then they were running the football a lot on 2nd and 10. It kind of seemed pretty one-dimensional. It seemed like first down, they were always throwing the football, and then second down, they were running. And it didn't seem to work. There wasn't a ton of big runs broken out. But I completely agree with you, Chase. In my opinion, and I know his stats didn't suck, but this is probably Shedeur's worst game in terms of pass accuracy that I've seen of him in a Colorado uniform. A good example, and this throw wasn't even that inaccurate, but it was inaccurate enough to really break up the play. There was that screen pass. I can't remember who it was to. Was it to Micah that they dropped it and could have basically gotten to the end zone? They had 20 yards of clear field in front of them.
Who ended up being a field. I think it was Augustave.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
and I think it was because the throw wasn't very good. It was a little bit lower, so you had to kind of dive to get it. It wasn't an awful throw.
And the field was wet.
Yeah, that doesn't help. But that's
we've been very
just one example.
We are very spoiled after if Steven Montez had done that, you never would have second guessed it, right? So we've been very spoiled. Keep in mind, right? But for Shedeur, I agree. Definitely his least accurate game, at least since he's been a Buck.
I don't know about that. The UCLA game last year was terrible, though. That was rough. And it was a similar story where he got sacked 7 times. So there's definitely a correlation there. But
Chase doesn't remember the UCLA
I honestly, I can't compete with the institutional memory of Sreya, so it's possible.
It was bad.
It's just surprising to see him missing, generally pretty throws that he makes, right? Like in the same way that if Patrick Mahomes was doing it,
and to his credit, he said that in the press conference. He said that he did not play well. So
yeah,
and I mean we got to talk about it too. And Chase, you did a great job covering it. The blocking sucked. Or maybe not the blocking. Like Shedeur was holding the ball way too long. They gave up 8 sacks, I believe, to Baylor, which is just an astronomical number. They're on track to giving the same number of sacks as last year. I think they're on track for about 50 sacks if they keep up this pace. So we got to talk about it. And it's not completely the O-line and it's not completely Shedeur. It's a problem all around. And even like your running backs pass blocking too. There were some missed assignments there as well this game. But let me pose this question to you 4. What do you think is the percentage of sacks that is Shedeur's fault? Like if you had to put a percentage to it.
I think here's the problem with this question, though, is the fact that he could have been sacked at least 5 more times. And he actually scrambled to get out of those. Yeah. There was that one at the end of the first half where he was going to get sacked from his blind side, and he just had a third a sixth sense.
Spidey sense.
It was insane. That was insane. Like he was on his blind side. He ducked out of the sack And then he threw that pass to Omarion, who made an incredible play, somehow not getting his knee down.
But if he would have thrown the ball earlier, he wouldn't have been in that situation.
Who is he going to throw it to? I honestly, that's what.
But
so I think that I agree with what you guys are saying, that he did have a bad game. I agree with Shedeur that he had kind of a down. We'll say I'm not even going to call it a bad game. I'm going to call it a down game.
Yeah.
But some of the throws that he had to make, that he did make, were unbelievable and are absolutely going to make it into his NFL scout tape, where they're like, yeah, that's the guy. Like, look at the, because I remember hearing some people criticize Shedeur for not being evasive and not being mobile. I'm like, no, you're not paying attention. This dude, he got sacked a lot, and it could have been so much worse last year, and it could have been so much worse yesterday. That is terrifying. And I know we can go back and look at the tape and maybe determine it's not necessarily just like one or two people. It's just maybe like the entire unit as a whole not knowing their assignment in a certain play. I went back and watched the well-off media footage, and I saw Coach Lodeholt just going crazy on his guys, being like, they're not even doing anything crazy. You're just not touching them. They're literally walking by you. And I know one thing that we were talking about earlier looking at, which I think we have an explanation for, is there was one sack in, I want to say it was the third quarter, where, my God, Hank Zielinskis literally was not even facing in the right direction to where the guy who he was matched up against was going. And there's reasons for that, right? It also looked like Michael Welch missed a block, and that's going to be a problem too when you have like all these young running backs who haven't figured out their exact role. When are you pass catching? When are you blocking? When are you running? Like RPO stuff. They weren't doing that much of that yesterday, I didn't think. But it is not good. I know. So this is really evasive to Jake's original question, being like trying to reframe it in a different way. I still think that there's a O-line problem. And the biggest reason I say that above all else is we saw the protection that Dylan Raiola got. We saw the protection that Bo Nix got last year. And I know that's not necessarily a fair comparison. You're looking at elite O-lines against, at the time last year, a very, very bad D-line. But man, those guys were just like chilling in the pocket for like ever, basically waiting until someone finally gets open and then you can make a throw. I mean, we're never going to have a game like that. CSU is the closest thing we'll ever have to that. And other than that, like, we'll never have a clean game like that again this year if we keep playing like that.
Disagree. I think the O-line showed great growth yesterday, because guess what Baylor did on every single play.
We're gonna clip this. We're gonna clip this.
We need to pause on this.
You know what Baylor did on every single play? They stunted and they twisted every single time. And you said it, Chase. Shedeur had more time. So the difference between the sacks that Shedeur's taking this year and Shedeur's taking last year is the amount of time before those sacks happen, right? Last year, he'd snap the ball, nobody's blocking, now he has to run. This year, it's snap 1,000, 2,000, then he has to get out and move, right? So him holding on the ball a little bit more is going to be a little bit more prevalent this year, but there were so many reps where the O-line was passing off stunts really, really well. There are lapses. Absolutely, there are lapses. That fourth quarter breakdown, like, they had a terrible end of the fourth quarter, but up until that point, I thought they played pretty well. And to say that, the offensive line was being shuffled down quite a bit. I think Phillip Houston got subbed in the second half. We put Khalil Benson out there. Benson got torched with speed. It's our tackle positions are going to be a little bit.
Seton had a terrible game. I mean, and not just blocking, but penalties too. And that's bad.
They went after him.
Yeah.
So there are things we got to clear. We can't hold like we did. We can't get blown by with speed like we did. But we passed off stunts. Shedeur would step up in the pocket and they wouldn't quit. They'd keep going to find guys to hit. So the reason why Shedeur was able to move, you make one guy miss, these guys are going to come back and hit him. And so now you have more time and now you can start moving. So I'm not ready to write off this O-line yet, right? Like, until they start showing the tendencies of last year's O-line where it's snap and then it's snap to sack is less than like 2 seconds. That's what's going to get me worried. Right now, snap to sack is like 2.5, almost 3 seconds.
And how about the fact 4th and 1 twice, right? This is 4th and 1 last year. Guaranteed we were getting stopped. 4th and 1 twice. They went and took it. And they went and that's why I have a hard time throwing Hank Zielinskis, even though he had some bad missed blocks, right? they went and took it there when they are run blocking, and it's true run blocking. I think you made a good point about this last week, Topher, but instead of doing RPOs, when they are just truly like, hey, you are run blocking, go get on a sled and shove these guys. This is actually a decent run blocking O-line. Like they get out there and they move some meat. So I was pretty impressed by that as well. I think they deserve some flowers, but the thing that can't keep happening is these absolutely back-breaking penalties that kill all your momentum, right? Because how many times would we have a great play that running, it was like 20 yards and they got called back from a touchdown, right? Where you have a great play and then you get a holding call, it's 10 yards, right? And Jordan Seaton, I get it, right? He's what, 19 years old. He's a true freshman playing the most, one of the most important spots on the entire field. And he frankly got out overmatched yesterday and we got away with it, but that has to improve because, it's bad enough to let your guy through, but what's even worse is when you get a 10-yard penalty and you totally stall the drive, especially when it's outside of the play. It's just really frustrating. But I agree with you, Topher. I'm not ready to give up on this O-line because there are moments where Shedeur has a lot of time and he's still not finding his guy or whatever. And so I have a hard time just completely blaming the offensive line for poor offensive performance. I think there's a lot more going on. I think it's more nuanced this year as compared to last year.
Yeah, that's fair.
Our next bullet point is Shedeur is a magician, and I'm not 100. I mean, obviously he 100% is. I'm assuming that's about the end of the game, but there's a lot of points yesterday where, frankly, he looked unworldly. And I know we just got done talking about how we felt like he didn't have his best game, but there were times where all you could do is say wow, right? Like putting a ball on a dot several times and finding his guys.
God. Well, I mentioned the pass to Omarion and the scramble before that, but I think it was either a play or two before that where he had the crazy scramble for like 15, 20 yards to extend that drive. It was, man, he's got the it factor. I really hope that wherever he ends up in the NFL that they do a better job protecting him. And that's no guarantee. Like we see what's going on with the Bears and how well Justin Fields is playing now with the Steelers. So it's no guarantee. He just needs to really end up in the right situation. He's got a lot of talent. It's incredible. It's the instincts too, And I know we were just roasting him for holding on to the ball. So maybe there is part of that. And I do remember there was at least one or two times we're like, throw it away. This is bad. But in some ways, because of his tenacity and his willingness to want to extend plays and make something happen, that's kind of also how the magic happened yesterday too. And we'll get to talking about some of the other things that went wrong, but there are a lot of other ways that we could have made this game less interesting and just put the foot down and got it done. We did end up outgaining Baylor by over 100 yards. So when you look at the yardage battle and like to Chase's point, getting like tush pushes and goal line rushing touchdowns, that's not something that CU has done with regularity in like the last 10 years even. So there's a lot of promise on that side for sure.
Absolutely. And so Shedeur wasn't a magician and he had to escape pressure a lot. I think part of the reason why was a little bit of play design. We called hitches a lot in situations, and Baylor's secondary is disciplined enough where hitches is not going to work. So there were times where he would drop back and no one would be open, and then he has to go make a play. And hitches is not one where you are actively moving with the wide receiver, so you just sit there, that dead in the water. We called that 2-3 times, and that's inexcusable, right? After twice, you should not go back to that play. There's a couple times where we ran screens and like tried to attack the edge, and that got us in some hot water because of how quickly their safeties could come down and crash. So as much as we're sitting here being like, Shedeur held the ball on too long, there's a little bit of blame that needs to go on the play calling. Baylor's defense, they're running a lot of cover 2, a lot of Tampa 2, a lot of trying to force things to the edge, right? And a lot of our routes were to the boundaries, to the sidelines. So we had guys running exactly to where they were expecting us to run. Our biggest shots, our biggest successes when it came when we attacked the middle of the field, and we didn't have a lot of routes designs that were doing that. So this is some simple things that I think we've definitely seen it. We have ability to attack the middle of the field. We just need an offensive coordinator that's able to go to it and to make sure we don't have to have Shedeur running for his life because no one's open off the
very quickly.
Preach.
I think there does need to be some credit though for, at some point it became pretty obvious, and you even posted this in our group chat from Folsom Field on that Wi-Fi that's apparently greatly improved. but
awesome. Awesome.
They straight up were not spying Shedeur. Like they did not respect the fact that he might run. And I have to assume my homeboy genius Mensa candidate Pat Shurmur realized this and told him, hey, I know you're not a run first guy and you shouldn't be, right? You are our offense. And we've seen what happens when you get hurt, but it is there for the taking. They do not respect your ability to run, and you can run. Like Shedeur can run. That's certainly not the top of his game, but seeing that and making that adjustment really led to a pretty big improvement in the second half, I thought, and even in the later second quarter. So I do think he at minimum deserves some credit for those kinds of. And I agree, the hitch routes are inexcusable, but in the grand scheme of things, is that what was keeping our offense back? I don't know. I think
he's got a little Cepho in him running the ball, right? Just like the angry power running. I love
warrior,
that.
Warrior mentality.
You just don't want what happened to Cepho to happen to him.
And he's done a better job of sliding, but there were some times where I was like, you should slide now. And then he goes diving forward, right? And he's got that dog in him. He's just built different. But
But seriously, we can't have those shoulder injuries though, because that's what did us in the Rise season. It could have been an even more magical season with everything falling into place. But Cepho got hurt in all 4 games that we lost. So,
Chase, I just hate to do this to you, but I have to come full circle. Remember how we said this is the most balanced game that we've ran, and we had over 20 carries? How many of those were Shedeur running?
Right, but like that's part of your offense.
So hang on, actually, no, that's like scrambling. So
none of those were
I want to see
in the 21 number.
He's just talking about
destroyed with facts and logic. Yeah. Destroyed with facts and logic.
Okay, destroyed.
Topher's on the run.
I can see it.
Shedeur had 19 carries.
On the ropes. He's on the ropes.
Shedeur had 19 carries on top of that, and I'm assuming that includes sacks, right?
Yeah, it's a bad stat. They need to fix it.
It's a bad stat. So he lost, I think it was like 52
So 11
yards.
carries.
Yeah, negative 52 yards and sack yards. So if you take that out, we were averaging somewhere around 5-point-something yards per carry, which is very acceptable, right? It's not elite or by any means, but that's very acceptable. Like if you're able to consistently churn out that kind of yardage. And we talked, I think, on the last podcast about tackles for loss and negative yardage. Baylor ate us up. I think they had something like 12 or 13 tackles for loss total, including the sacks. It's just ridiculous.
And that D end is really good. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit. They have one of the better D ends we will see all year, I hope, because he was awesome. He was everywhere. And so be it.
How is this Baylor team this bad last year? Did y'all watch?
No, I think they're gonna be a lot better than people realize. I think they're a sleeper. But we keep saying that about all of our opponents. So maybe we're just catching all these trap games.
And Nebraska.
Yeah, we're everyone's Super Bowl, right, Chase?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I know we want to move to defense, but last comment I have to make: whoever the referee was in the fourth quarter who missed the first down spot and called it 4th down and cost us 20 seconds, it worked out for us, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I want that man in jail, because that is genuinely, truly the most egregious spot I think I've ever seen. It was off by at least 5 yards.
Yeah, it was like 3 yards off.
It was like
a malpractice.
So clearly a first down, but not only did he not give us a first down, he moved it like a full yard back. It's so whatever. Like, we'll move on. But
credit to our offense.
It has to be reviewed.
Yeah, agreed. But then Shedeur got picked it up, so credit to them. But yes, agreed. Spot on. All right,
Topher, take us to defense. I got it out.
I can transition us.
Go for it.
You want to talk running game, Topher? Go for it.
No, I was going to talk about Travis and just like have him be our transition to defense. So you go running game first, and then we'll talk Travis to transition to defense.
Running game, I don't know. What did you guys think? It was okay. Stats wise, it didn't look great. Isaiah Augustave averaged 3.5 per carry. Michael Welch averaged 2.4 yards per carry. The exciting thing is 3 touchdowns between those 2 guys. So we're starting to use the run game more in the goal, on the goal line, which is fun, and in the red zone. But yeah, I don't have any crazy thoughts to add. If you have anything, Topher.
It felt like our vision needs to be worked on a little bit more. There were times when we'd like run like an outside zone or try to get to the outside, and there's clearly a cutback lane or clearly an inside cut. And Micah and Isaiah were just trying to rely on their speed to get around the outside. I think that comes with experience. I think calling more runs so they can see it more on film, so they can see them and learn that patience will really help this run game. But that was really the biggest takeaway that I saw. I think, we did a better job of pulling a tackle, pulling a guard, trying to run that power, trying to create that lane. And I think it's only a matter of time before we really start getting this moving. I also think Baylor's D-line is really, really good, right?
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is you had Offerdahl as your starting running back at the beginning of the year. He's getting all the reps, right? So they're not seeing it at practice as much. You've got, I think they're both true freshmen, or one of them's a sophomore. So you got two young guys
freshman,
who don't have a ton of experience. I think that's part of it, but they are very quick to bounce outside, which is a classic like young rookie thing to do, right? And there were some times where there was room in the middle, and you're running a zone or a draw or whatever it is, and you are bouncing outside and immediately getting eaten up by that DN. So yeah, I agree. That was a bigger problem. It also hurt that all of our great running plays, it felt like, got called back for holding calls. So that's another thing that I think, the running game was better than what the statistics show. But who's even better than those statistics? How's this for a sick transition? Travis Hunter, over 100 yards yet again. And for those of you at home who have a crippling gambling addiction, his odds to win the Heisman have fallen from 24-1 down to 12-1 this morning. Wow. As of my most recent check. Everyone knows it's an unspoken rule that it's just the best quarterback award, unfortunately. But if it wasn't, and it was truly the best player in football, we're biased. I get it, but I just don't see an argument for anyone else. And it's refreshing to see, some big names in sports coming out and saying it. But I mean, and the fact that he actually took some plays off last game, maybe he's just not the workhorse we thought he would be, taking a whole 7 snaps off the entire game. But, I mean, unbelievable performance by Travis.
He's Shohei Ohtani wearing a football uniform, right? When you think about what it means to any team, where like in any sport where you have two sides, right? Where you have an offense and a defensive side, and you just have one person that's able to do both of those things at an elite level, the amount that it adds to the team, it's almost like you have an extra roster spot, right? So literally, it's like you have an extra roster spot. You have someone else, like when Shohei pitches, when he was with the Angels, right? He hasn't pitched yet for the Dodgers. But when he pitched for the Angels, like, you literally get a free roster spot for another pitcher. And obviously it didn't work out for them, but it's working out great it will end up working out great for the Dodgers when he goes back to pitching, right? Same with Travis Hunter, right? It's crazy. I was watching the Pro Football Focus recap of the game yesterday, and Travis Hunter, the cornerback, was the second highest rated PFF player of the game, and Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, was the 5th best player of the game. Like, what? Are you kidding me? That's insane. That is insane against a Power 5 team. And I really, we'll see how Baylor ends up doing. I think we're all a little gun shy now after how things turned out last year with TCU and Nebraska. But Baylor definitely showed some things that make them look like at least a bowling team in the Big 12, especially the new look Big 12 that doesn't have Texas or Oklahoma. And Kansas State looked awful the other day. Kansas lost again. It looks like it's a conference that's kind of up for grabs. So when you're facing a team that looks like a quality team, and you have someone just a Swiss Army knife taking over the game on 2 different facets, it is a cheat code. It's an absolute cheat code, and we are lucky to be fans of the team that he gets to play for. He's maybe a once in a generation type of player, so we're very lucky.
I made a very, very bold post on our X account where I said, we are watching the greatest ever University of Colorado football player to ever do it. And I understand that the olds will be upset because Rashawn Salam, Michael Westbrook, Slash, all those guys, Byron White, who happened to become a Supreme Court justice, and plenty others, right? But I don't think, this guy's one of one, and I think he's going to end up becoming the person that everyone will be like, I saw him play in real life, right? I think he's going to have an awesome NFL career as well. And it's just, we are so lucky to live in this universe, in this timeline, where we get to watch him play for Colorado.
Yeah, and we need to soak it up. We're never going to have this duo again, this Shedeur Travis duo. It's so exciting. And I keep beating this drum, but he's so fun to cheer for. He's just such a fun-loving guy, 4.0 student, goes on Kai Sanat's stream and does his touchdown celebration. Like, we got to soak this up as Buff fans. There's only one Travis Hunter, and he's going to go down as one of the best college football players ever. Heisman aside, right? He's going to go down as one of the best college football players ever. But let's talk a little bit about that last play. Before he went out, he told Shador, I'm going to get an interception. I'm going to get a turnover. We need to win this football game. Sure enough, Travis Hunter did Travis Hunter, and he read the play so perfectly. Made the tackle, kind of led with the helmet, led with the shoulder, right at the football, which is what you're coached to do. Popped it out right before the goal line, and we couldn't grab the ball, but it went out of bounds. I don't know if that was on purpose to make it go out of bounds. Didn't really
It
look
should
like
have
High
been.
IQ.
It should have
That's
been.
high
If it was
IQ.
not on purpose,
Yeah.
they should say it was, because that
Yeah.
is the smartest thing you can do. It's like,
Yeah.
during a Hail Mary, batting it down, which Baylor, I guess, was not aware of. But it is better to yeet it out of the end zone than it
Yeah,
is
so
to
they
try to
can't fight
cover it
for
up
it in
so
the
that they can
pile.
get it. Right.
They can't fight for it in pile. That A+ IQ.
The funny thing is, do you guys remember in the Nebraska game where everyone was making fun of Travis for his business decision to not try to tackle Dowdle on one of the first, it was either the first or second touchdown of the game? Everyone's like, oh, see, he's just like Dion. He can't tackle. He's afraid to tackle, blah, blah, blah. Which, by the way, I think is also a misnomer. I think that was just a reputation. Dion, they just wanted to find something against him because he was so talented at everything else. And now Travis comes out, makes the goal line the goal line fumble for just unbelievable stuff. And honestly, from my angle, I didn't know it was Travis at first, but then when I realized it was Travis, I was like, dude, just send him to New York already. I swear, just
Shame
send
on
him,
you
just
for
give him the
thinking
trophy.
it wasn't. You should just assume anytime something awesome happens.
I had the same thing. I texted our group chat. I'm like, who was that? And Arthur responded, Travis. It's like, of course it was Travis.
God, just proving everyone wrong, one step at a time in every game, in every way. I mean, what do we need to put him in on the offensive line next or something? Does he need to be like a pass blocking or a run blocking fake running back or a tight end or something? I mean, what can't he
Honestly,
do?
probably punter.
Kickoff specialist.
Yeah, I mean,
Can he be? Yeah, it's like, can he be a kickoff specialist?
Can't be worse.
We need one now because Chase Feely's out for the season with his torn ACL. So, hey, Travis, if you're listening to this, can you kick? We might need you. He's unreal.
Yeah,
He's so good.
He's a unicorn, and any NFL team is going to be lucky to have him. I'm really, really, really hoping the Los Angeles Rams.
It's going to be the Raiders. It just has to be the Raiders. It has to be like the worst.
The Rams are currently down 24-14 to the Niners, about to go down 0-3. I think if we go down 0-3 with all the injuries, the Rams are going to tank for Travis.
I'm just telling you,
the rest of the defense, okay, we need to talk about, once again, they had a phenomenal second half, just an absolute lights out performance from our linebackers. I can't rave enough about how good this defense is, how good we are at coming downhill. Cam Craig adds such a tenacity to our secondary.
Tackles. 13 tackles.
Unreal. He plays safety the way I wish everyone would play safety, just coming down, hard nosed, get to the football, make plays. The only thing that we really need to talk about is, like, last week we talked about how good DJ McKinney was in coverage, and he got targeted a lot this game. And a lot of those reps were
dropped a pick.
Yeah, that he dropped a pick, but the back shoulder fade, there was 2 of them on there. The touchdown catch right over his shoulder, and DJ McKinney got picked on, right? Baylor has some athletes, and they basically looked at film and said, I think we could beat this guy. And they were right. So we really have to reassess when we are playing man with DJ against athletes like that, or if we look at moving Hood to that position to have Hood. Hood played a pretty good game. But those are the things that I saw on defense. What did you guys see as far as the rest of the team?
Yeah, to quickly add to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Before we go to the linebackers, I thought Baylor did a good job of getting the running backs involved in the passing game. We run a lot of man blitz, and with that, the linebackers are blitzing. The running back usually opens up, find him in the flat for a nice 10-yard gain. I think Baylor did a good job of that. I think teams might notice that on film. But yes, linebackers. Shreyas, do you want to take it? Give it the PFF stat.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So again, if y'all haven't seen it, I believe it's Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. They do like recaps, really good stuff. But he was raving about CU's run defense, but especially their linebackers. And basically, Pro Football, take PFF with a grain of salt. They're not perfect. They have their own eye test that they assign grading to. We don't have all the insight in the world into that process. But as of right now, as far as like the quality of linebacker play, it's, to quote him directly, Ole Miss, Alabama, Colorado. That's insane. When was the last time we got to say that about Colorado? I mean, I feel like for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've specifically struggled against the run. The one thing I will comment on that has now it's reared its head multiple times is the quarterbacks, the design runs for the quarterbacks where they just run straight up the middle and get huge yards. North Dakota State did that against us. And then obviously we had that happen to us yesterday on Sawyer Robertson's breakaway touchdown in the second quarter. So that's definitely going to be something. And actually on that Sawyer Robertson touchdown, the one other point that's related to this is Cam did kind of miss the tackle there, and it looked like he was out. Yeah, he was out of position. But you know, if that's the only downside that you have, then I feel like that's something you can clean up. It did seem like that quarterback was uniquely mobile. Maybe that's not the case, but he did seem like they were doing the design run a lot because it was working, and he was pretty quick and he was making it work. So yeah, if that's one area of criticism, I think that's fair. But as far as the actual run stopping, it was phenomenal. And when we stopped, actually it was on a design quarterback run, stopped him on 4th and 1. That was huge. Was that in the third quarter, guys? I actually can't remember now. It was in a key spot, though. We really, really needed to stop them there, and we got it. And that was one of those plays where you'd see a team lining up on 4th and 1 going to run for it, and you're like, oh, well, barbecue chicken. We're screwed. No, they're just going to give it up, and then next play, they're going to throw a touchdown, or shoot, on 4th and 1, they're just going to get a touchdown, because you know what? That did happen in that game.
Which I was to say, we're not that far removed from it because it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, but Nakai and Levante Bentley are awesome. They're just ball hawks. It's like almost like having two Nate Landmans out there.
It's exactly like having two Nate Landmans out there, actually.
What's funny is Levante is an OB. Was he a Carl Durrell recruit? He transferred from Clemson back in the day.
No, he was
Mel
a
Tucker.
Guy. No, he was a prime guy. He was at Clemson for 3 years, and then Prime brought him in. You're talking about Bentley, right? Yeah, he didn't come to the team until last year. He was new.
Oh, okay. I thought he was one of the stick around guys, but
it feels like it, right?
He's a beast.
It feels like it because he just has that. He has that like old school tenacity that we love.
Was a little disappointing, by the way. Trevor Woods 1 tackle, and it was his birthday. Or allegedly. I mean, that's.
But the tackle, if you remember, was a QB scramble, stopped him short, and that's what led to the 4th down stop that Stray was talking about. It was a big time tackle.
Fair enough. All right. Well, there's his birthday tackle.
And to make one final point about Pro Football Focus, that wrap up, I really hope it pans out this way, but Dalton on that pod, he was very specific, like 2 things that you expect out of a team that does well in the Big 12. Stop the run, good quarterback. So if we're stopping the run, we know that we have a good quarterback. I mean, if this was his bad game, and he still did some of the insane things that he did, and also in the rain, like kind of it was coming down. It had to have been affecting the gameplay in the 4th quarter. And then now we're stopping the run. Ooh,
yeah,
look out. That's scary.
I think we need to at least briefly talk about the fact. I mean, 2 dropped interceptions. I don't think there's any turnovers other than that fumble into the end zone at the very end. But the 2 dropped interceptions that could have totally changed the outcome of that game.
And that second one would have been a pick 6 too.
Right.
Preston Hodge had nothing but green grass in front of him.
And I think Jake's hot take last week and my hot take the week before was that there was going to be multiple interceptions. This team is not winning the turnover margin, and it's not for lack of opportunity, right? Like that was a wide open hit you in the hands, and maybe that's why you're playing DB, not wide receiver. But we gotta convert on those because those opportunities only come once in a while. And this team is not a team that's blowing people away. You gotta win those big moments. But also shout out on the other side, Shedeur not having his best game ever, but that included 0 interceptions, right? So he's taking bad sacks, doesn't throw it away. but he's not throwing interceptions either. So, all things being equal, just another thing that we kind of left on the board. And I think that's when people were talking about, like, it feels like we're the better team, but we're not winning. Well, part of that is the fact that we have these opportunities to get these turnovers that we're just not converting on. So hopefully that's something where it's just bad luck and that changes over the course of the season. But I think, we'll see about that. Before we talk coaching, I think we should just talk special teams, so we can finish out the final three.
That was
Thank
bad.
God I stood by my man in the dark when no one wanted to stand with him. Alejandro Mata did nothing wrong that game. He made his point after touchdowns. He made his singular field goal, if I remember correctly. It was never in doubt.
It was a 40-plus yarder, too. It was a 40-plus yarder.
It was never in doubt.
43.
It looked beautiful. That is all the nice things I have to say about special teams. Our punting was abysmal, and I got flack on that in the past, and I'm just not over it. But
Still not over it.
Mark Vassett is really struggled that game. He had one great punt that should have been downed, within the 5-yard line that we our team. But like, that's the crazy thing, right? Is our punt team is not. It just feels, they punt and all their guys are right there. And it's not like Mark Vassett is punting it 80 yards in the air. Our guys are just not getting to the ball. And it led to that, punt return for 52 yards or whatever it was. And then we had the kickoff returned on us. And we've been talking about it for, it feels like 2 years now, where special teams is going to be the difference and it's going to cost us a game. That was supposed to be the game that special teams is going to cost us. We got killed in special teams, basically in every facet, other than in our glorious kicker, who made his field goal, unlike Baylor, who had the opportunity to ice the game with a field goal, and it looked like he was trying to kick it back to Waco. But generally, although I guess South would be the other direction.
I was going to say.
That's my point. It was Northwest, I guess he kicked it. But regardless, what an abysmal performance by our special teams everywhere. And we talked about this in the past. Maybe it's because the special teams coach was busy trying to infiltrate Saudi Arabia for NIL money. I don't know, but whatever it is, and more than anything is, Jace, we're very sad for him with the ACL tear. It sounds like he's done for the season, but it was not good enough when he was doing it. And now we literally can't kick it past the 30-yard line. And I just refuse to believe we'll put some Topher kicking highlights up while I'm saying this, but I refuse to believe that in the city of Boulder at that campus, there's not one kid that can kick it to the end zone for kickoffs. And if that's possible, do an open tryout. Like, we have to be able to kick into the end zone on kickoffs at 6,000 feet of elevation, or 5,430 or whatever it is. We have to be able to do that. So there's my rant about special teams. I'm honestly surprised that Topher's not about to burst because he's red, because he's so ready to shred our special teams. But abysmal performance by the special teams yesterday.
It should have cost us the game. It really should have cost us the game, because like when you go look at the final outcome and the yardage difference. I mean, we were talking about the yardage discrepancy before, and the fact that we gave them 7 points, like we literally gave their special team 7 points where they actually scored. But then there's also that huge punt return in the first quarter that set them up, I think, to a field goal. That was their first 3 points of the game. And then there's at least 2 or 3 other lengthy punt returns as well. My God, that is brutal. Like, in these one possession games, I mean, we could be sitting here talking about how that did cost us the game and trying to cope with how that's the one part of our game we need to fix, and we can still be competitive if Baylor turns out to not be the worst team that we play this year. So it was that close to facing the music of our special teams literally costing us the game and putting us in a position to not be looking at bowl eligibility, which is a disaster, right? Topher, I really want to hear from you, though. I had to get that in, but man, I'm sure you're just...
Special teams is not hard, right? Like, if you take care and do your job, it's not hard. So I want to start with punt. I hate our punt formation. One of the shank putts was because we let someone through. And on the film review, it's pretty easy to see why. They overloaded one side where they had 4 guys and he had 3 guys to block them. And it should have taken a guy to see being like, oh, we don't have a hat for a hat here. We have to shift our line that way. We also don't have a punt protector for some, who knows what. I don't know what we're doing on punt. It looks terrible every
To
time.
make sure that we have enough guys to get down the field, right, Topher? Surely then we're not struggling to get guys down the field.
I don't know what we're doing there either, right? Like, if you want to see the difference between good coaching and bad coaching on special teams, watch the special teams tape of Baylor versus CU, because every single time Baylor punted it, granted, their punter is phenomenal, right? He gets the juice on that ball and he puts everything he has into it. But Baylor they are so disciplined. They would snap, chip, and they are full sprint down the field, and they spread out and they contain really, really well. It just felt like CU just could not get off of those chips, and then it was like we were half-assing it down the field every single time.
It's almost like we don't have a special teams coach. Who is it? Let's call for his head.
Or when you have simple things like when Bassett does hit a good one and your gunners are there, you need to tell them, you run straight to the goal line and you look for that ball right away, right? We could have downed them inside the 5.
Oh, I forgot about that too.
Simple things that we could do to just improve our special teams right away that we're not doing. Now, going to kickoff, it looks like Stoyanovich is going to be the guy going forward. I saw him warm up. He can get the ball to the goal line at altitude. So that's not good enough.
Should we just kick it out of bounds and give it to them at the 40 or 35 or whatever it is every time? Is that our best hope right now?
It's better than squibbing. It's better than squibbing.
It's better than squibbing, but our penalties are going to look like our penalties are going to look terrible if we do that, right? Like we shit on them for being like, oh, the penalties, but we're going to take a penalty every time we kick off now. We score 7 touchdowns.
Fine, because guess what?
7 penalties.
Guess what, Topher? Orlando elevation not very high. Pretty low elevation in Orlando.
Yeah, it might even be below sea level.
If you're going to be
humidity,
if you're not going to kick it past the 35 anyway, you might as well just draw the penalty and put them on the 35 instead of letting them return it on you, or whatever the squib thing was.
The pooch kicks.
No,
this is. I don't mean to be alarmist, but this is a problem. And I am worried about it because our coverage on kickoff also didn't look great. Like, I just don't understand how you have a kicker that's like, we know on your good kicks, you're like 5 yards deep. So more than likely, we're going to have to go make a tackle. How can we know that and also be bad at coverage? It's like the thing we do. We know we have to do it.
Thank God we won. Just thank God we won that game, because like this conversation would be that much worse right now. It's existential for sure, right? This looks like something's fatal to the team when you're talking about the two things that you really need to do well, and possibly the Big 12 being apparently being less competitive, or I mean, it's more competitive in terms of the teams all being closer to each other, but certainly not at the level of play that the Pac-12 was the last 2 years. I mean, those teams were so good that we had to play last year, and to be staring at having the opportunity to at least be a coin flip in most games, only to have your back broken by kickoff returns for touchdowns, which has now basically been litigated out of the game in the NFL. And now we're talking about kickoff returns for touchdowns, punt returns for touchdowns, setting up the other team with good field position, forcing your run defense to actually even be better. And that's one of the things. Our scoring defense and our rushing defense is amazing. Like, it's done really well. And part of the bias there is that we've consistently given them bad field position. Because like that, we talked about during the Nebraska game, that shanked punt to start off the game. It was like, uh-oh, here we go. Gave up a touchdown, shanked a punt. They get the ball at midfield, just walk down the field, get another score. That's just can't happen when you're talking about one score margin games. And again, thank God we won. This conversation would be very, very different if we lost. But something has to change.
We should have our math intern Arthur do the math on what the average field starting position for the other team is this season. Because my guess is that it is at least 10 yards higher than what ours is. At least. Because the defense is perpetually being put at the 40-yard line to start a drive, and still, more often than not, finding a way out of it. But I mean, it's just so backbreaking and it's so constant. Yeah,
that's true. Bassett had a shank in Fort Collins. We talked about that a bunch last week too. It can't be like this. Like if we're playing Kansas State, no, Kansas State might be reeling a little bit now after what happened to them in Provo, but man, play some of these teams that are supposed to be competing to win this conference, and we're talking about, this exact type of scenario panning out there, and us not getting a Hail Mary, like 2 Hail Mary miracles in a row. One didn't convert, one did convert. Like this can't keep happening. Please
to wrap this up, PSA to all high school kickers, punters, come to Colorado. There's a reason why Coors Field has a humidor, because home run balls travel farther.
Did you say humidor?
Whatever.
You know what he meant.
You knew what I meant.
Yeah.
There's
a reason why PGA Tour players hit the ball 10% farther. Come to Colorado. Your stats will be padded. Man, I am struggling with the words today, but we need help.
Thank you for the recruiting pitch, Jake. That was very elegant. And every kicker is going to see that.
There's a kicker in Parker. He plays for Chaparral High School. His name is Mason Crosby.
Oh yeah, that's right. I do remember hearing about.
He's in the class of 2025.
I've seen this one before.
I've
seen this one before.
So if you are in Parker and you know Mason Crosby, tell him he would come to Colorado. He's an instant legacy.
I live
instant
right
legacy.
I live down the street from Chaparral High School. Maybe I'll
go to his game. Go to his game and talk to him. Go to his game and talk to him.
Is number 2 retired? Could we run out a second Mason Crosby as number 2 at the university? Mason Crosby is not number 2 at Colorado,
He's
right?
number 16 here.
Yeah.
16.
I got it, Topher. I'll wear my CU polo shades and have a notepad.
It won't be a recruiting violation at all. Yeah. It definitely won't be a recruiting violation.
It wouldn't be. I have no affiliation.
You're unofficially recruiting for the school, just like Trevor Riley in Saudi Arabia. How about that?
Same teams for special teams. Yep, for special teams we go.
While we're talking coaching, because I'm sure
we're talking about Saudi Arabia.
Just before we kind of hit the Q Wealth Management Player of the Game segment, I think there has to be a conversation about coaching and decision making on the team. Thank God we lost the coin toss in overtime, because it probably would have been the same outcome, but Prime
did say that he was going to go on defense. Someone asked him
in
about
the post.
That.
Yeah.
All right.
But we still made a mistake.
We did.
With choosing what side to defend from.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they like that side more. And I don't know why.
Your students were going all out.
And the Baylor section is on that side.
The Baylor section is on that side. But I think if you go to your offense and you go, I like this end zone more. I feel like this. I like this. I don't know what it is, but I like the way the depth perception, because the stands are whatever it is.
I don't like looking at the flat irons. It really bothers me. Now, I think what they must have known was that the fans are going to storm because they're idiots before the game is over. And we need to make sure that we are far enough away from them that the game will still count before they get to us, and we won't have the band is on the field kind of moment. RIP Pac-12. But that's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise, why would you not send them into the teeth of your student section for your famously poorly behaved students and give them everything? I mean, I get it, Topher. It's probably like just a preference thing, or maybe they didn't think about it all that much because they were so busy thinking defense first, defense first, defense first, and that's all he could think of. And maybe if that's what it was, good. Like, fine, I'll take it. But it just seemed like a poor decision on that. I don't know if we want to beat that to death. Strays, did you have something on it?
Yeah, I just I'm thinking back to some like the other memorable overtime games at Folsom. I think that Nebraska win was in the student section side. So
section. Yeah.
So was the Cal game last year.
The Cal game was
Oregon
2
State.
years ago. Yeah, it was Oregon State. It was all that side. So there's precedent to doing it that way. And then last year it was Stanford and CSU both on that side, on the other side.
On the bad side. Yeah.
Bad side. Yeah. So I don't know. That one's a ticky-tack one though. I'm not gonna beat that one to death, I don't think.
And Jake put the timeout one on our agenda. I think this is ticky-tack. So Jake, you can tell us why it was such a bad coaching decision. I understand you have to conserve your timeouts, but as far as poor timeout usage from Coach Prime has gone, this is probably not even in my top 50 at this point.
Well, I'm just saying it's a trend, right? We're out of timeouts going into the 2-minute warning. Trying to think back what the first two were used for. I think we just had a bad personnel matchup for one of them. And I mean, I feel like one of them was on third down. It was a big play, and if you got to burn a timeout to get it right.
One was the fourth down that we made the stop.
Yes.
Right before
so
that.
Like,
so we took
that's
a timeout.
a well
That was
used
a great
timeout. But just in general, I wish we had a few more timeouts. It would have really come in handy in the last drive. But hey, we still won. So just wanted to add it to the agenda.
Now, to that point, I do actually think that some of those timeouts, like just the idea of taking a timeout because you see a bad matchup or something like that, is really smart. And the reason I say that is we talked about that Sawyer Robertson touchdown, the design run. And right before Sawyer Robertson snapped the ball, I saw someone in the defense go like this. Like, so clearly, because you remember that play. I think, Chase, you pointed out in the group chat. They spread the defense out completely. And someone saw it and said, oh, this is going to be a design run. Like,
and we had all of our linemen to the right side of the center.
Yep.
Which is weird. I don't love that anyway.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think, do you guys think Cam was actually the designated spy there? Because
he wasn't a designated spy.
Yeah, he was so out of position. I just can't see that being the case. But either way, that would have been a great time to use a timeout where they like go spread it out. Like, oh crap, this is going to be a design run. They're going to basically have green grass to run all the way to pay dirt. So I have no problem with that if that's how it's generally being used.
That's fair.
Now that there's the 2-minute warning in college, 2-minute timeout, in college football, now you have that extra free timeout as well. So I think that's pretty helpful.
And for that 4th and 1, Livingston did take credit, and he's like, "Yeah, that was on me. I called the wrong defense." So
that's what I mean. That's where you got to
stand up, guy. Stand up, Livingston. Future head coach of Colorado.
I love that guy,
Livingston's our guy, Chase. Your guy is Pat Shermer.
Oh yeah, my bad. Happy to be here. Yeah.
I think we've pretty much fleshed it out. So I think it's time to pivot to
our favorite segment.
Our favorite segment.
QWealth
Management. Players.
Are you doing it?
Who's doing the ad read? Who's doing it? Who's doing it?
We need to call a timeout here.
All right. This is the QWealth Management Player of the Game. Please go to qwealthmanagement.com to learn more. We appreciate them. They ran it back with us this season for a second round. Our unanimously agreed upon offensive QWealth Management Player of the Game is actually a coach, Pat Shermer. I'm just kidding. LeJohntay Wester. How could it not be? What a play. Unbelievable. And, it was a great throw, great extension by Shedeur. But like we talked about, Shedeur struggled at some points during the game. I think we had talked about maybe making him the player of the game. But LeJohntay Wester had to fight through a guy and got there, right? He threw, Shedeur, great throw by him, but Wester, making the play and getting there for the game-winning touchdown. Unbelievable. On defense,
what's funny is his stat line wasn't very big too. He had 67 receiving yards, and most of them were that Hail Mary. But we got to give it to our guy.
43 of them were that Hail Mary.
The most important 43 in the game, unquestionably.
Before you go to the defensive side, I just want to point out the body control on that catch. That is insane. It's absolutely insane. So like I've always played outfield, right, when I play baseball. And for me, going back on a fly ball is always an adventure. Because you have to turn your back to the ball. You have to go run to a spot. And so, he was running to a spot, but at the very last minute, you could see LeJohntay correct himself back towards the field of play, find the ball, prevent it from touching the ground. Unbelievable, Yeah. And I saw some people referring to that play as lucky. I'm like, okay, maybe part of it is, you can say, maybe there's a little bit of luck involved because it was a Hail Mary, but was that an impressive catch. It was an impressive catch. And it was an impressive throw. He put it in a place where the defender that was following him up couldn't get it, and he didn't put it in a place where the safety coming over couldn't get it. It was perfect. Oh my God, it was amazing.
It was a punt returner catch. He got, both of his elbows in and made sure that it didn't drop on the ground. So great job, LeJohntay.
Just unbelievable.
I think my favorite part of that play is if you watch Travis Hunter coming across on the post and you see Omarion Miller and his guy is just on the ground, he just hurdles them so smooth as Wester is catching it. And it's just so fun to watch how athletic Travis is. But continue with the next defensive QWealth.
Speaking of Travis Hunter, Topher, I'm glad you mentioned him. Congratulations to Travis Hunter on being our defensive QWealth Manager Defensive Player of the Game. Mostly, not just because of that, the incredible play at the goal line, which was obviously, spectacular. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but they just don't throw to him. And it's funny. One of my friends here in Atlanta was like, I think he's overrated, which is like a stupid comment to make just generally. But his basis was like, well, we don't know how good he is in the secondary because they don't throw at him. And I was like, exactly. Like, that's my point.
That is a non-ball knower. I'm sorry, that is a non-ball knower.
How great was Richard Sherman? Well, I guess he's overrated because they just didn't throw at him because he was that good, right? Like, unbelievable impact, on the offensive side as well. And he probably, he certainly would have been a deserving candidate for the offensive player of the week as well. But absolutely spectacular. But I know we've definitely talked about that at nauseum. The special teams.
Also, before you shift, quick shout out to Cam Simon Craig, 13 tackles, 10 solo tackles. He deserves an honorable mention.
Declared the winner during the game, but unfortunately, things out of his control. Travis is just that good. On special teams, it was actually awarded last week for our loyal listeners, but we decided that we believed in Mata so much that we would award it, and we were right, because if not Mata, literally no one else deserves. If not for Mata being nails with his field goal, we would simply not have awarded a special teams player this week. That's how bad it was. So congratulations. I know it's a very coveted award to all those folks.
Yeah, Chase, I made it a point to record his field goal just so I could shout him out in your honor, because you put him on a pedestal, and we talked to him a little bit. We did have a very brief.
Mata's a big fan of the pod.
Yeah. We know he sees our clips on IG. Shout out to Mata. And we had a very brief conversation with him, and he let us know that he was working on fixing some mechanical issues that had come up, and he did a great job, and we're so proud of him. We love Mata, man. We want Mata to keep doing this. He is one of our favorite guys on the team. He just seems like such a nice dude. So I made it a point. I made it a point to record it, and he nailed it. That was probably good from 45, 46,
I just hope when Mata thinks of our podcast, he thinks of Josh Groban's hit song, You Raise Me Up, because there was a lot of haters out there, but you got to stand with your guy. And,
hey, this isn't nothing. This isn't nothing either, but he made those extra points when he really needed them at the end of the game after the Hail Mary and in overtime. People take that for granted. It is not unheard of. Do y'all remember that terrible Oregon State game in 2018 where they Oregon State? Yeah, but their kicker missed the extra point and gave us a chance in overtime, right? Like, that happens every now and again. And Mata, he stepped up there and he knocked him in. What a great game for him. And I hope that builds confidence and he continues to do that for us, because right now it looks like he's our only positive difference maker on special teams, which is terrifying. Let's not make that the case.
I bet his over. So I'm a true believer. Had the betting over on Mata. I bet you guys didn't. So true believer there. Jake, what's new on recruiting?
What's new on recruiting? Quick recruiting update. We had 2 official visitors for this game, and I can't think of a better game to be at if I was a high school kid. I don't know why they haven't all committed yet, because that was just electric. But we had a couple 4-stars in the building, both committed to another school. We had Antonio Branch Jr. He's a 4-star safety out of Florida. He's committed to Penn State, has a ton of offers, can pretty much go anywhere he wants. But he was in Boulder.
Oh, come on.
The L for Florida, or for Penn State. Yes. Chase, we're about to steal one of your recruits. Watch out. We also had Byron Baldwin. That was also an official visitor. He's a safety out of Maryland, also committed. He is committed to Indiana, but a 4-star recruit. He's rated a 90 on 247. And was some rumblings from On3 that he might be a commit. We'll see. There was a crystal ball prediction, I think, from Steve Wiltfong for Byron Baldwin, and he's a stud. Just to list off a couple of his offers: Colorado, UCLA, Indiana, Boston College, Minnesota, a bunch of different offers, Wisconsin. I think he's a solid player. If we can pick him up, that would be great. And then another one that I'm really excited about, just real quick, is Carday Smith. He's a 2025 recruit, not an official visitor, but he was there on an unofficial. He is committed to USC, but he's a big boy, 6'5", 293, out of Alabama. He's a 4-star offensive tackle. Imagine Seton, Carday Smith, and oh gosh, I'm blanking on that left guard that we got. Man, help me. Do you guys know? Oh, the left guard that committed to us is a 4-star. If we can land him, the O-line is going to be exciting. So just had to shout that out. And then a bunch of other unofficial visitors as well, like Matt McChesney's kid was there. So it was an exciting weekend. Hope they enjoyed their visit. More to come there in recruiting.
What I love is that we were targeting guys that are already committed. Like, I think that's hilarious.
Okay, we need to talk about that real quick because I hate that. I don't know why we do that. We only target guys that are committed, and it's so reactionary. I think kids really appreciate it when you're one of their first offers, and it's so much harder to flip a guy, right? I mean, in today's college football, right, 50% of recruits flip, even though they're 1,000% committed. Then 2 months later, they flip. So, I mean, it's not an awful strategy, but I just kind of wish we were early on kids. And
it is literally Coach Prime's calling card to flip them. And if that,
I think,
stay toxic. Like if it works for you,
stay toxic.
Stay toxic.
You got Travis
Stay
Hunter
toxic,
that way.
King.
Like,
but that's just with 1 5-star, right? I mean, it's hard to get early on those
with
5
Cormani.
stars,
one
especially when
5-star, greatest
Well,
Colorado player.
one 5-star every class. Sorry, let me correct myself.
But like,
is where they're getting
5
flipped.
years ago, if someone had said,
I'm not
we will
bashing
flip,
it. I'm
we
not
will flip
bashing it.
1
but here's the
5-star
thing.
every
Here's my
class.
argument against the being the first, because guys flip so much. So if you're able to flip a guy, you need to beat one school. If you're one of the first, you might need to beat 10.
No, you guys are
So
wrong. You guys are wrong in this.
You come in and you go,
we
hey,
get early
the place you're committed, I'm better than that. I have better facilities than that. I have a better crowd than that. I have better coaching than that. Just the guy you're comparing it to. So now you're doing this instead of everywhere they're looking. I think it's a little easier to flip a guy once they're already committed.
Tover, I think you've chosen the wrong hill to die on, but I am proud of you for choosing a hill to die on after I've been the only one
hill there,
defending hills for several weeks.
Bad hills.
And Nikai Hill Green, one might say. Haha.
Anyways, we might have to edit that out. That was that bad. Let's go ahead and do the UCF preview. So UCF is actually a huge favorite this coming weekend at the Bounce House. I've seen him minus 14. ESPN has him as minus 13.5. Over under 63.5 points expected. It's supposed to be a high scoring affair. I personally think UCF is incredibly overrated. They have played pretty impressive teams such as the University of New Hampshire and Sam Houston State, which is in fact an FBS team now.
Chase,
somehow.
Could you say they're about as overrated as another Big 12 school? Maybe in Texas?
Ooh, I forgot my Texas Tech bash this week. Texas Tech is terrible and no one wants to live in Lubbock, Texas. Anyway,
no context needed.
Yeah.
Back to UCF.
A lot of Tech fans in our Twitter mentions for whatever reason. And then at TCU, they won 35-34 in kind of a crazy game. But I just don't think, TCU is not that good as we learned last year. Congratulations.
They were down 28-7 too. They were down 28-7 in that game.
And you beat Sam Houston State pretty bad, and you beat New Hampshire really bad. But I'm not moved. I just don't think this team is as good as people seem to think. They have KJ Jefferson. We talked about this, or maybe I talked about this early, before the season even started. KJ Jefferson coming over from Arkansas. He's a playmaker. He's awesome, but he is also basically Jameis Winston. Like, he will go in there and throw the best ball you've ever seen in your entire life, and then he will come back out and throw the worst, most backbreaking interception you've ever seen. Good news for him is you can throw it directly at our DB's hands, and apparently we won't even catch it. But if we can get turnovers here, I think this is a very winnable game for us, and I adore the value on the money line at plus 440 and the plus 14 points. I really think this is a win. I know people are all of a sudden very afraid of UCF. I'm not afraid of UCF. I know ESPN even likes UCF to win the conference. I think it's ridiculous. Maybe I'll be eating my words. People always seem to find these clips and then come at me, but I think Colorado wins this one. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be pretty fun, but I think our defense is going to hold when it needs to, bend, not break. We have to get it done on special teams. My score prediction on this one, I'm trying to get Mata enough field goals in there. I'll say 34-27. Give me the Buffs.
Wow.
I can go next. Yeah, I think UCF's a good team. This is going to be a really good test for our rush defense, right? I think we've all been very impressed with our ability to stop the run, but this UCF team is a very good running team. They have RJ Harvey, who's a really good back. Also notable, I believe they're coming off a bye this past week, so they had a lot of time to prepare for CU. The Bounce House, aka UCF Stadium, is pretty electric. I think I picked the Buffs to win this one at the beginning of the season, but I think I'm going to flip that, unfortunately. I'm going to go UCF 35, Buffs 28. I just don't see it. It's hard winning football games on the road, and especially with your opponent coming off a bye. It's a tough matchup. UCF's a good team. I also think the Buffs are a good team. So I think it can go either way. I think the spread is, what's the spread again, Chase? I think it's
14.
14.
It's insane.
Yeah, way
so
too high.
Disrespectful. Yeah.
Way too high.
It's going to get bet down, though. The public's going to bet that down, I think.
I'll say that we were kind of thinking that Baylor hadn't played great competition so far either. And the same trends that came out from their game against Air Force and against, who did they play first? It was some FCS team, right? But some of those same trends manifested themselves in our game, right? Where they really were, it really did look like they were improved defensively from where they were last year. And they do have some playmakers that were making things happen offensively as well. And so with that in mind, it does give me some pause. I know we talked extensively about how, like, you're playing you're counting the Sam Houston State as an FBS win, but it's only their second year in FBS. And then UNH is not even, to my knowledge, a successful FCS team. I think CU played them many years ago, and they were rough. That was one of our, it was a rough team to watch. And then Utah kind of put them in their place, although it did seem like, again, or I guess I'm talking about Baylor, but in terms of UCF, like, TCU is up 28-7 on them, and TCU looks like they might be really rough this year. They got absolutely boat raced by SMU yesterday. And I think Sonny Dykes got ejected too. I recall seeing a video of him leaving. He used to be the SMU coach, so it was kind of funny to see him get ejected and like hyping up the crowd for some reason, even though it wasn't in a stadium. So
such a bad look for the Big 12, by the way. But
yeah. Yeah. So with all that said, yeah, there are definitely the signs of fraudulence, but at the same time, I do think that just the general quality of talent across FBS is a lot narrower than it once was. And so it does make me a little bit nervous about that game. I predicted this as a loss preseason, but I think for the sake of keeping good tradition that has worked the last 2 weeks, I've got to predict, we'll say 15-5 Buffs.
15-5. Okay, scoregami out here.
Five Mata.
Well, I think Sirius is 2 for 2 in his scoregami. Buffs win every time. Sirius gives a scoregami score. So
that's what I'm saying. It's not, like I said before the season, I had this as a loss. So take that for what you will about how serious I am about this prediction. But I got to publicly go out and pick my weird score, right? I mean, sorry, it's not a weird score. It's totally going to happen. 15-5 Buffs. Let's go.
I love it, Shreyas. I'm a lot better at doing my takes after I get to watch the film. So I'm going to stand on business to all the Nebraska fans that were salty about when I said Dylan Raiola won't win you a football game. I absolutely stand on business. Dylan Raiola will not win you a football game. Your best bet to be good in the Big Ten is to get so far ahead that he doesn't have to. So take that with what you will. Moving forward,
we didn't let Topher put this as a segment. It's so he's just like pigeonholing it at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to stand on business. Anyways, I look at this and I go, them coming off a bye week and us having to travel, they're going to be well rested. They're going to be well prepared. I think we're in for a dogfight. I think 14 points is way too much, but if we are going to come out successful, we're going to have to come out successful, and it's going to have to be a kick. So give me 27-24 Buffs. Mata's going to hit a 45-yard field goal from the right hash to win it.
Ooh,
man, that's so specific. I love it.
So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Please tell all your friends about us. If you like our content, let us know. Interact with us on Twitter. Leave a comment. Let us know. With that, go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.
Go Buffs.